So I'm actually very honored to be following X.AI. I think Piers mentioned a moment ago that I had the good fortune to introduce that company to him. I remember when I was first interacting with Amy, I didn't know that it was a machine. We'd gotten into a little bit of a back and forth, and I'm like, Amy, I'm sorry to be difficult, but that's not going to work. Amy, I'm sorry for being kind of an a-hole. I'm sorry, all this stuff. And I just remember thinking, boy, she must hate me. She must think that I'm just the biggest douchebag in the world. So it's very interesting where this kind of technology is evolving. I really do think that something like X.AI and some of the work that we're doing at Watson, I really do think that this is the future. So we'll talk a bit about that here for a few moments. But before that, I want to start with a very quick story on an engaging topic. So I hope you guys are white-knuckled on the edge of your seats. We're going to talk a little bit about population statistics in the late 19th century United States. So give me a quick moment. This is a card from the census of 1880. Turns out it took 8 years to complete the United States Census of 1880. As a bit of background, a nationwide census is taken every 10 years in this country, which means that by the time the 1880 census takers were finished, their results were already obsolete. Now, this is problematic. According to the Constitution, representation and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers. That means the census is not a number that you want to get wrong, but by 1888, there wasn't much to be done. So everyone kind of looked forward to 1890. The country, though, had changed in the decade spanning 1880 to 1890. The Statue of Liberty was dedicated in New York Harbor, which is some direction from here. The Union had actually grown by 4 states. North Dakota, South Dakota, Washington, and Montana were added. In fact, the United States population had grown by 20%. It was so much had changed, in fact, that it was estimated that the census of 1890 would take 13 years to complete. That actually represents another lost civil decade. In response to this problem, an entrepreneur called Herman Hollerith invented an early form of computer that he called a tabulation machine. And this machine did exactly what its name suggests. It tabulated, it counted. And he pointed it at the census problem. The effects were immediate and for the time period profound. According to the Library of Congress, the census of 1890 was completed in just 1 year. Now, I like this story, and I tell this story because it illustrates how changes in our circumstance can actually impact the evolution of the technology that we employed. And for a topic like intelligent machines, cognitive systems, Watson, which is what we're going to talk about this afternoon, that is critical. It's actually rooted in the idea that our machines should be nothing more than tools for extending the powers of the human beings who use them. So please keep this idea in mind as we talk about how our relationship with intelligent systems will affect how we live, how we work, and how we play. So let's get to it. Quickly, though, before I move on and switch topics, Mr. Hollerith, I want to close out on him. He went on to found a company called the Tabulating Machine Company. After several mergers and under the leadership of a guy called Thomas J. Watson, that company went on to be called something that today is known as International Business Machines, or for short, IBM. Watson. Watson had a very public debut on Jeopardy in 2011. It won. Sorry if I ruined that for anybody. That appearance was actually the culmination of something that we have at IBM called a grand challenge. These are our moonshots. In this case, the challenge was to the research team to create a system that could navigate an ambiguous, confusing, complex environment, human language specifically. Now, that's no small task. Human language, human intention, as you just saw demonstrated by X.AI, it's convoluted. Meaning is very plastic and heavily dependent on context. We have some toy examples that we like to think about in the office and kind of riff and throw these around. This is what we do on a Friday afternoon. We think about Watsonisms, things like houses that burn up while they burn down, noses that run, feet that smell. What's the difference between a wise guy and a wise man, right? We understand what all of these things mean, but for a machine, that is very difficult, right? To get a machine to operate in an environment that has somewhat illogical rules, you have to, in essence, take it out of its somewhat clean and logical environment of if, then, and else, bring it into the somewhat the messier environment of human logic, should have, would have, and could have. And that's exactly what the research team did, and they did it successfully, as demonstrated on Jeopardy. But after Jeopardy is when things really started to get interesting, because we started working to point Watson at real-world problems. We'd had the hypothesis then, and we have the belief now that, again, changes in our circumstance were presenting opportunities. Human-centric information, content, research, insight were being generated at prodigious rates. And because Watson was designed to interpret just this kind of information, we believed, and we believe today, that it's the tool that will help us adapt and indeed thrive in what is rapidly becoming our new normal, which is a society that is driven by data. If you have any doubts about that, just reach into your pocket and feel the cell phone that I'm sure is resting there. It tends to be one of those kind of topics. In the last year or so, there's actually been a lot of anxiety on intelligent systems. So I want to spend just a brief moment thinking about what some of these systems can't do. So these systems are not, anytime in the near future at least, going to mimic the subtleties of the human condition. They're not going to take over core human roles or function as equals with us on a team. Perhaps most sadly, you're not going to fall in love with one anytime soon. I've actually been on the New York dating scene now for 3 years, so I'm really pulling for this use case, but it's not, you're just not going to see it. These are examples of a technology that, for all intents and purposes, is us, right? These are projections of our fears, of our hopes, of decisions that have been made, of decisions that are not made. And because they are projections, they are divorced somewhat from what is concrete in our day-to-day reality. Now, in contrast, the cognitive system, Watson, is not divorced from our reality. In fact, it is something that is uniquely capable of inhabiting the world we live in with us. And that is a world that its character, it's complex, its pace is frenetic. It is rich in information about us, what we think, how we feel, how we behave. Information that we generate that allows us to capture knowledge, share it with each other and with future generations. Information that's generated by our medicine, by commerce, by sport. A cognitive system works in partnership with us in a world like that. Because it can interpret our moment, we're able to teach it about our challenges, our opportunities. As it learns, it gets better at doing its job, which frankly is to help us focus on those things that are and frankly will forever remain uniquely human. Finding inspiration, leveraging creativity, solving problems by making meaning of the seemingly meaningless. Now, it's been about 5 years since Jeopardy. We'll be coming up on the anniversary before too much longer. And I get asked this question a lot. Well, what has Watson been working on since? What are you guys doing? Well, Watson has been stood up or deployed in healthcare, where it's helping us live better. P53 is a human protein that, when turned on, can suppress cancerous tumors. To turn P53 on, you need another protein called a kinase. There are about 500 human kinases. They can modify tens of thousands of proteins. But we only know about 33 that can affect P53. It's a very special relationship, a bit of a needle in the genetic haystack. And the rate of discovery is something on average of about 1 per year. Working with researchers at Baylor University in Texas, Watson was used to analyze research that was published on P53 prior to 2003. The objective of the exercise was to determine whether Watson could suggest new kinase candidates to study. And the answer was yes. Actually, 74 candidates were suggested. Now remember, Watson only looked at research that was published prior to 2003, so there were some that we already knew about because they were in the data set. Of those 10 that were already known about, Watson successfully accounted for all 10 of them, which is interesting. But what's perhaps more interesting is that it predicted 7 of the 9 kinases that would be found in the decade following 2003. In essence, the rate of discovery had gone from, on average, of about 1 a year to 7 over the course of this study, over the course of several months. Watson is also helping professionals. Red Ant is a startup out of the UK. They work with retailers to provide smarter solutions to in-store associates. And they're using Watson to help those associates better and more quickly understand relevant information like product descriptions and specifications, which allows those associates to deliver an enhanced customer service experience. Wayblazer is a startup out of Austin, Texas, the great city of Austin, Texas. And they're using Watson, yeah, right? They're using Watson to redefine the way consumers plan and book travel. Their mission is to make the experience of planning vacation as simple and as easy as chatting with a knowledgeable friend. Spark Cognition, another startup out of Austin, Texas, is using Watson in cybersecurity. They're using the tool to help cybersecurity professionals keep ahead of evolving attack vectors. And those are just 3 examples of what we call ecosystem partners. There are many, many more that are driving commerce across multiple industries using Watson. Finally, we come to one of my favorite instantiations of the technology. This is Chef Watson. You may have had a chance to actually partake in some Chef Watson creations a little bit earlier. But this is something that's designed to help all of us create new dishes. It's been trained on a combination of 9,000 or so recipes from Bon Appetit, combined with an understanding of what chemical flavor compounds do and don't work well together. The idea is this: you give the system a list of ingredients and a style of cooking, and it'll suggest recipes for you, recipes that are ordered from the most surprising, or from the most conventional to perhaps the most surprising. I have an example here, and this is an Austrian chocolate burrito. I'm going to read the ingredients list to you. It includes tortilla, chocolate, ground beef, vanilla, Edam, which is apparently a kind of cheese, apricot, cinnamon, orange peel, and edamame. I will leave it to you to determine how delicious that is. But if you get a chance to execute on this recipe, please let me know how it was. This is where we're at today. Again, we believe that our changing circumstances creating opportunity. Motivated, creative, industrious individuals are using Watson to realize those opportunities, and they'll continue to do so far into the future. Which brings me to my last topic. What does the future of cognitive systems look like? Well, to help answer that question, I want to build a mental model around another technology that interrupted the established way of doing things, that has impacted the lives of millions, is of massive import to the city in which it exists. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the New York City subway. I am from Denver, Colorado originally, so I'm not a cynic yet. I still find this fascinating. We don't have anything like it in Denver, but although we do have a lot of cool stuff there. It's actually an engineering achievement on massive scale. I mean, just think about it. Every day, millions of people board what are, in essence, giant metal centipedes and proceed to careen through hundreds of miles of tunnel that have been carved from the bedrock that sits underneath the 5 boroughs. I mean, in 2013 alone, the subway system handled 1.7 billion rides. Economically and culturally, it's a force. It helps shape the labor market and the demographics of the city that sit above it. Now, I'm sure the subway means different things to different people. For some folks, hell, it might not mean anything at all. For some folks, it might actually be a bit of a bad memory, but it's come a long way since this image. But for other people, it's a stage, a place to play. For other folks, it is a place of trade, of commerce. And for many New Yorkers, it's quite simply a way of life, right? It's integral. It's woven into the fabric of our everyday. To an extent, it's hidden. As long as the subway is running, as long as the train shows up on time, you don't even really notice that it's there. But if it's late, if service is delayed, boy, you notice that in a hurry. Now, I'm not saying cognitive systems are the subway by any stretch of the imagination, but I do believe that we will come to rely on them in the same way that we do rely on these other foundational but hidden technologies. X.AI is actually an example of that. At first, the way these technologies will help us will be in perhaps little ways, helping us have just the right piece of information at just the right moment that leads to just that inspiration that leads to the invention that solves some pressing problem. But eventually, these small things will start to add up to larger things, right? In industries like medicine and security, we'll be able to start focusing on more and more difficult problems. We'll be able to stop being so reactive and start being proactive. The P53 story is an example of that. Our relationship with these machines, with these technologies, will change the way that we work, we live, and we play for sure, but it'll also change the way that we educate, that we govern, that we interact with one another. You know, it's interesting in the technology industry, We say that tech will be innovative, disruptive, and transformative, presumably as it relates to everyday life. But the stories that I've told today, and I would actually argue that this is true, is that I think the inverse is also true. It is everyday life that causes innovation and disruption and transformation. If that's true, it strikes me that we've got the opportunity to be very thoughtful about where we let our technology go, what problems we point it at. I like this quote, "Wisdom is the power to put our time and our knowledge and our tools to the proper use." With something as powerful as an intelligent machine, a cognitive system, or Watson, this is doubly true. It has the power to unlock and make our lives so much better in so many ways. I think if we do it right, 100 years from now, some lucky person somewhere will stand on a stage not unlike this one, and they'll tell the story of our time, and that story may begin something like this. It was 2015, and cognitive systems had really started to change things. And that's all I have. Thank you.